As the country battles the COVID-19 pandemic, proudly South African is calling on consumers to buy locally produced products. This is in order to boost and invest in the local economy. For more on this, we're joined by proudly South African CEO Eustace Mashimbye. Eustace, good evening and thank you for your time. You have adapted your e-commerce platform, but also has created another online platform during this pandemic. Tell us, how have you adjusted and what are the changes that are happening?
So in response to what the lockdown regulations were, especially before we got to level 3, and reliance was placed mostly on online platforms, especially for sourcing PPE and related stuff, we then started positioning our online store, RSA Made, to be the one that makes available those kind of items, including sanitizers and disinfectants and detergents that households required, but also those that were required by companies that were still operational and that were going back to work during that time. And now that we're at level 3, there is a need to really reopen the economy, but obviously there are protocols and regulations that need to be followed. And what we're saying is that as companies that are trying to comply with those regulations go out and source what they need to help them be compliant, we want them to buy local. So let's start there. The investment in the economy starts with the reopening of the economy. And that's why we've created even portals where the private sector and buyers from big business and small businesses can go onto those portals and find suppliers of that which they require during this time as they go back to work and reopen their businesses.
How is this safeguarding those consumers against those scrupulous traders who unfortunately are taking advantage of the pandemic and even in these times are selling fake goods, passing them off as South African produced or locally made?
In fact, I think that's the reason why we are positioning both our portals. So when you go into our online store, which is rsamade.co.za, or you go into the proudlysa.co.za website, and you go into the portals that have been specially designed and created for this COVID-19 period, you're going to find proudly South African member companies who have been vetted. And they go through a compliance process where we vet them for a few things, including compliance with that which is required in that industry. So if there's a product that is being sold on there, you know that we have checked that it complies with the standards as set out for that specific product in the industry category in which it falls. So all those products that are found on any of our portals or any of our platforms have been vetted, and consumers can rest assured that they are buying high quality locally made products, and then more than anything that they're contributing to the creation and retention of jobs, which is the biggest worry for all of us right now, is that we need to retain whatever jobs we have and create much needed new jobs where possible.
And that would have been the theme for this year's summit, isn't it? Under localization, averting a deeper unemployment crisis. But, of course, that summit felt right on the day when lockdown kicked in on the 23rd and the 24th of March. Now, most of your members, of course, get that summit as an extra. With the lockdown happening now, what are you offering them as far as pointers on what to implement in their enterprises?
So I think, like you said, what we were looking at with the Buy Local Summit, which is our flagship event, was to try and ensure that we position it as an access to market platform for all those businesses that make their products locally, for those that render their services locally, because they are making a meaningful contribution to the creation of jobs in this economy. So that is what the focus is on Proudly South African, and that's why the two portals, it's about saying, is there demand for any specific product in the country? And we have ascertained that there is demand, extensive demand for PPE, for sanitizers, for protective and related items during this time. There is also a demand for consumables that people use on a day-to-day basis, whether in households, whether in their businesses, as well as by the public sector itself. So the role of Proudly South African is to make sure that that demand is fulfilled using supply that is made up of products that are locally made. made within the borders of South Africa. And that is the drive, is to ensure that we link up the demand and the supply, and we provide much needed access to market for South African businesses. And that is the focus of Proudly South African. And that is the advice we can give anyone who runs a business at this point in time, is to say, affiliate with Proudly South African. Make sure that you get that stamp of approval, because if you look at the Proudly South African logo, is made up of the colors of the Republic, of the national flag of the Republic of South Africa, which tells you that the product is locally made. But there's a tick there, and the tick represents quality, and that's what consumers have come to associate the brand with. So affiliate with Proudly South African, ensure that you benefit from the access to market platforms as we drive this process of getting buyers and getting the private sector to reinvest in the economy, getting consumers to ensure that they invest in the economy, because we all know of someone, or we all know personally, someone who's unemployed and is looking for a job. And these labor-intensive sectors especially that make the products that we consume on a day-to-day basis require our support.
Now, of course, South Africa already facing a deep unemployment crisis that has now become even deeper because of COVID-19. How are you lobbying government and bringing them on board with their muscle to ensure that not only in terms of spend, but also in terms of policy at this particular time, they continue to support your work of locally produced and locally manufactured?
In fact, we are part of a few work streams that are currently doing a lot of the work around the response, the economic response to this COVID-19 pandemic. And in these work streams, you find policymakers from government, you find business. Business is taking a lead through Business for South Africa. And in these work streams, the focus right now is on making sure that where capacity is required, we then start developing that capacity where there are companies that are already operational and all they need is an opportunity to scale up. They are assisted to scale up such that we can meet this demand using locally made products and services. So it's not just an issue of policy. Policies are in place, especially in government. There is a policy that stipulates that if you buy any of the products that are designated for localization, you have to buy them from companies that make these products locally. So the focus at this point in time is on making sure that those policies are implemented. There's a huge drive that we are part of together in those with those other participants of the work streams that seeks to ensure that there is huge compliance. In fact, so some of the labor federations some of the labor federations that we work for are focused on this specific drive. I mean, I'll give an example with the South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union, which is an affiliate of COSATU, that is driving this localization. There's a union that is part of FEDUSA called New Law that is helping us drive this non-compliance that we see potentially happening in the procurement space within government especially. So there is a concerted effort to make sure that legislation that exists is implemented, and that those who are responsible for buying and are heads of procurement and are part of the supply chain machinery in government adhere to these localization regulations, because they seek to ensure that we grow this economy through the procurement spend that is at the hands of the public sector.
Eustace Mashimbye, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight.